Hey everyone, Rachel Weaver here. I'm on faculty at Regis University's Mile High MFA program. I'm making a series of videos exploring different ways that folks can make money with an MFA. So today we're talking with HR Hegnauer. Thanks for being here, HR.
Yep, thanks for having me.
HR is a designer. So let's start. I know you're a book designer, and then I think you're doing lots of other types of design as well, website, that sort of thing, correct?
Sometimes a bit. The bulk of my work is book design, certainly.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about that? Sort of explain to us what does a book designer do? Like, what does your day look like at work?
I work remotely with and contractually with all my clients, right? So freelance style. And so I work with mostly publishers, sometimes self-published authors, but mostly I have these long-term relationships with different publishers who typically don't have in-house book designers, and so they contract out all of their design work. So to me, they'll come to me and say, well, here's the handful of books that we're publishing, whatever, fall 2022 or something, say, and then with each book, I'll get the final manuscript and we'll talk through design ideas and design aesthetics for the book and bring that book from, the Word document as the writer creates it into publishable book files and bring those to the final place before, submitting to a printer or ebook or whatnot.
And how did you get started? Like, how would one get started?
Well, before getting an MFA, I do have also a background in both graphic design and photography. And then after I got my MFA, I thought, what do I want to do with that? I'm not quite sure that teaching as a career is the route for me, right? I do enjoy teaching, but it's certainly not like my main way to make a living. And so I moved to New York City, where publishers are sort of centralized, at least they were at the time, and just tried to meet all the people that I know who publish, or that I didn't know yet, but I wanted to know, who were publishing all the books that I loved. And that was maybe 15, 16 years ago, and just kind of built up this network of publishers to work with. I started working in-house with one publisher for a few years and then left that and wanted to do my own business.
And how long did it take to build it into what it is now? Well, I guess my first question would be, do you work full-time? And then how long did that sort of culmination take?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do work full-time. And this is my way to make a living and make a, career and money off, to have a life. But to build that up, so those couple first years when I worked with Palgrave Macmillan as like an actual regular employee, I kind of built it up very part-time, and here and there would try to get a book or try to work on a cover here or make up a sort of pretend mock portfolio. I looked at my bookshelf and redesigned some of my favorite poetry books. Cool. I made better covers, what I thought were better covers for some of my favorite poorly designed books. And just try to create this portfolio of work to get working with publishers. And I guess I first started building that up by also making catalogs and flyers, posters for readings, and all these kind of non-book things peripheral around the book. And then I'd say it took, once I decided to go full time and leave my job, it took a few years, I don't know, a couple of years to really feel like I was making something that could be sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What sort of advice would you have for somebody who is thinking that this is something that they'd like to pursue at this point in time? I mean, I guess also the second part of that question is the only like way to do it, do you think, is to move to New York, or what if you can't move to New York?
No, definitely not. No. Moving to New York was very hard also. And I worked so hard there that it was hard to enjoy all the awesome benefits of living in New York. So no, especially now where everything is remote. I mean, a lot of my clients the bulk of them are still based in New York, but you know, I've lived in Colorado for off and on now for 15 years. I think the best way, or I guess a piece of advice, is that your question? Yeah, it's tricky because the one thing that made it so hard at the beginning was a lot of these publishers who were my clients, also I was friends with them, and being a young woman, it's very hard to invoice your friends. Yeah. I found that so challenging to like get over that hurdle of like telling my friends to pay me, you know, basically. And then at a certain point, I just had to like come to this mindset of like, okay, I'm running a business. I need to just make actual real looking invoices and just send them, or have a service send them if I wasn't comfortable doing that myself. And to kind of just bust through that hurdle. And once you start like acting like you have a professional relationship, even if you also have a friendly one, but if you start acting like you have a professional relationship, you all of a sudden just start making more money also. Those two go hand in hand for sure. Yeah. And people take you more seriously too. So I would really recommend just like, that was a really hard thing for me to get my head around, but do that. Right. The minute you start taking yourself seriously, other people do too. I don't know why it's so hard to take that step. But I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially like small business owners, especially in the arts, especially women, lots of especiallys. But you're right. I do think that's like a key step to building any business is like, no, I actually have an invoice that I'm going to send you. Yeah. Especially getting started, because, you know, you have to do kind of a lot of this sort of grunt pro bono work to kind of get a portfolio developed too, of, you know, I'll make all these cool things for you for free, or in exchange for some books or something like that. And so at a certain point, you have to kind of make that switch into and doing the math, where if you wanted to make a living off of being your own boss, like what does that actually mean? Do you feel like or what skill set that you brought from your MFA into your work now? What do you think that is? Like, what helped you do your job effectively after having gone through an MFA, if anything at all? No, for sure, definitely. A lot of people that I work with, the publishers that I work with and other writers, they really like that I'm a writer, and that I mean, a huge bulk of the books that I work on are poetry books. Most of them are. And so they like knowing that I have a poet's eye looking at it, right? That I'm not just going to like take somebody's amazing poetry book and just like slam it into some sort of thing that was designed for, you know, a work of prose or something, but to have a more careful eye of how something could move on a page. And then also, you know, just personally speaking, it's kind of exciting to get to read a lot of books, you know, months and months before anybody else gets to. I always feel like I get like this special sneak peek, well, of the whole book, but you know, that is such a treat. And yeah, I mean, you get to know who are the authors you really admire and you want to work with. Like, I just finished work. I just sent it to the printer yesterday, actually, this new book it's actually a re-release of a book from like 40 years ago, but for Itel Adnan, who's in her 90s now, a Lebanese poet who's, you know, in my mind, she's like one of the most foremost spectacular, still living poets, amazing. And it's like, wow, I got to, collaborate on this book with her. And I got to make some art to go on the cover of her book, who she has a solo show opening at the Guggenheim yesterday, I think it opened. And, that's like such a thrill to me, like how exciting. I mean, I know that's not my project, it's not my thing, but I got to be a part of that with her is, amazing to me.
Yeah. My last question has to do with this balance that I think all of us who are writers and are going to be working in the world or are already working in the world is, finding that time to still work on our own projects. So I wonder if your work as a designer, do you feel like it helps fuel your own writing? Do you feel like, all of your creative energy is kind of put into your work and it's hard to carve out your own? How is that balance? And I know this is a slippery question, right? Like it's always kind of changing. And it also has a lot to do with the rest of our lives, but I do wonder how you feel about this career path in conjunction with your own work.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think all kind of various forms of the arts are always struggling with that, I think of my work as a book designer as mostly more visual. Even when I'm working with pages and pages of text, it's a pretty visual work for me. And so in a certain way, it lets my mind think about things. Whereas if I was like, constantly talking or teaching or doing these things, that's not so much a visual thing. So sometimes when I'm, say, like working on someone's cover or even just like typesetting all of their work, like in a way I can be thinking about my own writing, my own poems, and sort of like in the back of my mind multitasking or something in this way. But not that I can be like fully writing, but sort of thinking through something or thinking through a larger question. I always find it really, really difficult, though, to think about my own potential book covers. I find that nearly like, it's a very strange thing because like I make covers for people all day, every day, yet I can't think of my own work in a visual way. It's a hard thing to do. But one thing it also does, though, especially for poetry and stuff that's, lineated and not in paragraph form, is that it makes me think about how it could exist in a book format, right? Like so many poets, you're writing in Word on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and books are not printed in that size. So all the time I run into like writers who have these wide lines that they insist upon keeping, and they just like don't really translate to a book so well in terms of size. So even in that form or in that way, it informs the form of my work.
Last question. What if someone is interested in getting involved in design, but they do not have any formal training in design, in art, right? What's the first step, would you say?
Well, the first step, would be to sort of either crash course your way in through the programs or, make up some things. All the industry standard uses Adobe products. So InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, it's sort of like this trifecta of those three programs working together. There's this school called the Noble Desktop. They have a physical school in Lower Manhattan, but they also do tons of online programming. And they do these 2-hour workshops that are free, and they're all archived too. You can watch them all. And they're really, really, really good. I've taken tons of classes with them over the years and, recommended them to other students. And they also do long, multi-week classes you can pay for. But if you want like quick, how to get started in InDesign or something, or something more advanced, latest things in Photoshop techniques or whatever, it's a really good school to check out. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I will add that link to the description of this interview.
Yeah, Noble Desktop.
Yeah,
check them
cool. Okay, thanks, HR. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Be well, everyone.